Hello and welcome to What the Tech from Boast AI, where we talk with some of the brilliant minds behind new and exciting tech initiatives to learn what it takes to tackle technological uncertainty and eventually change the world. Today I'm thrilled to welcome Shan Gu, founder and CEO of Foci Solutions. At Foci Solutions, Shan's team helps organizations build strong software engineering teams and self-sustaining talent engines, with the belief that the best engineering teams are the ones that invest in each individual's development and learning. Foci's development pods works with their client software teams to provide coaching and mentorship on solid engineering principles and practices, while helping customers accelerate their product delivery velocity. Part-in-parcel, Foci helps clients develop internal training and learning frameworks to rapidly ramp up new staff, ensuring a more resilient and self-sustaining workforce. I can't emphasize enough how valuable this approach can be for innovative founders, especially those driving unique R&D to develop truly innovative products and services. I can't wait to pick Shan's brain to understand how he got into this space, the successes he's seen since launching Foci Solutions, and what's on deck for the rest of 2024. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Shan.
Thank you so much. It's absolute pleasure to be here. I love chatting about startups and tech, and this is the world we're in, and I'm just very excited to have this conversation.
Oh, that's fantastic. You have come to the right place. That is what we do here, talk about cool tech, but really talk about what it takes to build a startup. I think that's at the heart of it. So I'd love to know, Shan, how did you get into the startup space in the first place?
It's been a pretty organic journey. I mean, I grew up with entrepreneurial parents. I'm an immigrant. We moved to Canada from mainland China in the late 80s. So, my dad was a founder of a software company called Cloakware. They exited in my late teens, early 20s. My mom came here with a background in like computer science, working in the aerospace industry and back home, but like couldn't get equivalency. So she ran a coffee shop and opened a tailor and dry cleaning business, right? Just the immigrant hustle to get it done. So I think I've always been around that kind of stuff, and started my first company doing, website design and computer resale, like I think every teenager in the 90s.
Yep.
I did that when I was like, I think 18 or 19. I was an early employee with one of the kind of IT support companies that started off in Ottawa around the same time as like Nerds on Site and that kind of good stuff. Did that for a couple of years, and then decided I really needed to go and kind of, I don't want to say pay my dues, but really learn how a big organization operates, what good looks like and whatnot. So I joined a large global consulting firm, spent a good part of a decade there, realized I really want to go and do my own thing again, joined a small startup, build up a line of business, and then just kind of organically evolved from there. So I think I've always been kind of very adjacent and involved in entrepreneurship. And it was just one of those things that came back to me. In my 30s, I was like, I'm going to have another kick at this.
I love it. Yeah, because you can't shake it, especially if it's something that's really baked into you from an early start. I'm actually seeing a lot of parallels. We had Daraj Goel. He's based out in Vancouver, but he was on the show recently and he was talking about how in his teens, he was doing a lot of like computer repair for his dad's company. He was an immigrant as well. And they came over and computers were relatively new at the time. So he was a teenager with a beeper and everyone thought he was a drug dealer at the time. And I was like, I absolutely would have agreed and thought you were a drug dealer too, but it's the same thing. Like it was in the air growing up. Sounds like it's a very similar scenario with you. There's the entrepreneurship and there is the kind of background in tech from your mom and your dad, which is super, super cool. Now, Foci in particular, I gave a little bit of a background on the cool stuff that you're doing there and how you're really helping innovative businesses and not even just Foci itself, other startups in the community get the teams that they need to drive innovation.
Yeah.
How did this come together? And maybe tell me a little bit about what makes Foci different than other solutions out in the market.
Yeah, I think, a lot of the origin story with Foci has been organic, right? Reacting to market need, doing the things that were necessary because we're a small player and we're a bootstrap startup. So, when you don't have access to capital, you have to make decisions a little bit differently. Coming up through a large global consulting firm, the particular one that I was employed with was really good about building culture and incubating talent. So that was something that was kind of ingrained into me for kind of the formative years of my early career, right? And when we created Foci, the first problem we had is being in Ottawa, you're competing against, either established telcos and Silicon Valley and like the big kind of hardware and network and whatever, and massive software companies. And then you're competing against Shopify. And that's never a happy thing to do if you're trying to compete against Shopify during like, the mid 2000s for talent, because they were on a rocket ship and, I can't compete with the stock options, right? So I think the formula that we figured out is, well, we can't go and hire an army of senior engineers on a bootstrap budget. What we had to do was really invest in talent ourselves, right? And really figure out from first principles what made a good engineer. So that's something that we did for ourselves organically because we recognize as a startup, that's what you need. And one of the things that I kind of took from my previous job is that what makes a good engineer or what makes good kind of product delivery or a good team member in general is the soft skills. It's not about, can I write better Java code or .NET or whatever. It's about, can I learn the next thing? Am I asking questions? Am I curious? Am I, learning things based on first principles rather than just getting proficient with tooling? So that's something that we zeroed in on pretty quickly. So that's how we hired. That's how we built our kind of internal models for career progression. But we very much kept that kind of secret sauce to ourselves because that's how we were successful and that's how we scaled and that's how we ended up with some really amazing talent. And then there was something that clicked, I would say probably around like 2019, 2020, when we started getting a lot of feedback from our clients or like, I don't really understand how you guys are doing it, like how your engineers are just so much more effective than our teams, especially at the same comparable levels and how they function so well together. So like we were starting to see like outsized change, right? And we had this pattern where every organization we would get into, they would just want more and more and more. In fact, from a business perspective, it was quite terrible because we would have, really high client concentration constantly, right? We would land a team of 3 and then they would take everybody. And then, if the project ended or the funding situation changed, now we're left with like a massive bench, right? So like from a pure business operations, I probably made some massive mistakes there. But one of the things we kind of realized in 2019 and 2020 is like we should be selling into that, right? Instead of selling Foci as a company that like a product outsourcing or like we can build you code, the more valuable thing was we can help you build talent and we can help you improve your engineering culture because we were seeing kind of the opposite of what we do inside our client organizations. They would be like, well, why are my teams not effective? I'm like, yeah, you haven't invested in them to train them how to make good decisions, right? They're taking orders and they're waiting for direction from up top, but that doesn't scale. So, we started finding a lot more value in like we still have to deliver code. Nobody just pays for talent. That's not how the market works. But what we're realizing is that's our differentiator. And we deliver amazing code, amazing software, but we're helping clients get them there themselves. And then the other thing that we realize is like we're a consulting company. We love building stuff. We're not operations. We don't carry pagers, right? We're not a managed service provider. So, we saw a lot in both our early days and from people in the market where they would go to an outsourcing company or they go to an agency, they would develop a bunch of code. When the client took it over, they're like, I don't know what this thing does, right? So the handover was usually not very clean from outsourcing to kind of an in-house situation. We didn't want that for our clients. So the model that we developed through this kind of mentoring and coaching and pairing was we also wanted to make sure that our clients could really internalize everything that we were building for them and with them so that they were entirely aware of how decisions were made, why they were made, kind of the chronology and the historics around a particular piece of software, a particular architecture, so that they weren't surprised with a bunch of stuff, when it was time for us to roll off and move on to something else.
Absolutely. I really like that. Again, like you said, they want to know the how and the why behind those decisions were made, but you're also not you're taking the heavy lifting off their shoulders, but you're not
Yeah,
making it a black box, more or less.
yeah,
You're making sure that they
absolutely.
have that insight into what the value is going to be, but also just like you said, it's got to be internalized on their end. They got to
Yeah,
take it and be able to actually use it after the fact. And
yeah,
I love that you really drew a line underneath that. This isn't just a pure play outsourcing service or solution that you guys are offering here. It's about really cultivating a team that loves building stuff and making sure that there's that passion for building with the team that you've collected here. But that soft skills. I mean, I don't want to bring it back to Boast so soon, but like that is really at the core of what I think we excel at here at Boast because our team, we've been doing this for a while here. We're a really scrappy team. I think you'd be surprised to hear how few of us there are in some departments, and not because we're strapped, it's just because we're
yeah,
super effective and we like doing that work. Like
yeah.
marketing work, it's just a few of us. And in a past life, I had an opportunity to go into one of those behemoths, one of those big companies. It
Hmm.
looked like retirement for me. I still like making stuff. I still like hopping on calls and meeting people. I still like getting my hands dirty. And like working with people who are hungry like that as well. So I think
Hmm.
finding those communities, that's not easy to do. And again, it's your secret sauce, more or less. I know we don't want to
Yeah.
sell it to the world, but I mean, building those
Yeah.
soft skills and building that investment into the people, that is such a huge
Hmm.
differentiator too. But and again, the Bose team, we work with our clients really closely, but we're not trying to take more of their time that they don't already have. Like they're
Yeah.
coming to us because they need somebody to do this work that they don't have the bandwidth, whether it's
Yeah.
financial bandwidth or human bandwidth to execute. So
Yeah.
we want to get it done for them, but we also want to take them along for the ride. We want to make sure that they can
Yeah.
actually get actionable with it. So that is super, super cool. One bit of a tangent question, just because I got to
Hmm.
ask, I'm the American in the room.
Yeah.
Ottawa versus other markets.
Yeah.
Why Ottawa? I know it's the capital. I know that's a big one,
Yeah.
but I know we do business with a lot of clients in Ottawa. Actually, we have a
Yeah.
lot of success between Ottawa, Toronto, and Vancouver. Those are kind of our main hubs. But I mean,
Hmm.
why Ottawa versus elsewhere in Canada? Or what are maybe the advantages of working in that market locally?
Yeah, so technically our office is actually located in Gatineau, which is
Yeah,
across the
yeah, yeah.
river from Ottawa on the Quebec side.
Yep.
Ottawa because I grew up in Ottawa, right? Like this is my home, my family's here, my friends are here. So that's just convenience, right? And I think familiarity and convenience and that's really it. As a company, we're all around the country. We've got folks from coast to coast. COVID really turned us into a fully remote organization. So then, we don't really have like it's an Ottawa company.
Yep.
Being in Ottawa, you have access to federal government, which we can get into in the whole market discussion. But like, there's a lot of opportunity here. A lot of people see government as like boring, but from us, there's a lot of opportunity. I think government is probably one of the places that can benefit the most from the type of services we offer, from modernization, from like really upskilling their engineering. If you look at where impact is, right, like delivering a service to government that changes how people get their passport or get their EI is significantly more impactful than working with like a mid-market SaaS company. If you really want to talk about number of lives touched, right? So there is something about the impact side that's really attractive here. And then the reason why we're located in Gatineau, again, organic. So when Foci was actually spun out of another organization, and the joke I have is we're like the teenagers that grew up, moved into the garage, and then kicked the parents out afterwards and bought the house. And that's basically what
Nice.
we've done, right? So like we started inside another organization. As that organization kind of matured and transformed, eventually got acquired, we spun out just prior to that acquisition, and then as we grew, we just took over the space. There are some advantages being in Quebec, right? Quebec has some pretty attractive tax credits, specifically for technology and startups.
Yep.
Some of those things are changing because of just the nature of COVID have changed work locations and things like that. So, when some of those tax credits are very geo-specific, then obviously applicability formulas change a little bit. But it is a very friendly market towards startups and technology startups specifically.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually brought up the unique funding programs too in Quebec because, like, I know there was a lot of noise when the budget dropped for budget
Hmm.
2024, specifically for Quebec's
Hmm.
and the rebalancing of CDAE, for instance, and how that's
Hmm.
going to be the refundable and the non-refundable. They're going to try to even it
Yeah.
out a little bit. So,
Hmm.
depending on where you're at or how long you've been taking advantage of that program, it's going to change how much money you
Yeah.
get back and when you can really tap
Yeah.
into it. So,
Yeah.
another little boast plug. We help everybody capture those credits in Quebec and beyond. But provincially, I'm glad that you dove into that too, because the government can benefit from the innovation you're driving. And that's a lot of why they structure their funding programs the way that they do. For
Hmm.
instance, to qualify for SHRED, you don't necessarily need to be uncovering something that's going to become a product tomorrow. The Canadian
Hmm.
government wants you to be driving that innovation because it could be something
Hmm.
that they could use down the line. So even if it's
Yeah.
not necessarily commercially ready, they want you to keep driving that innovation. They will give you the funding via SHRED to pay those payrolls, to keep them working on those projects, even during downtimes. And if it
Yeah.
doesn't bear fruit today, Canada wants to be behind that because they can then use that technology down the line. Like you were even saying with the impact stuff, it's important and it's logical. I'd love to know, since we're on the topic too, just about funding and R&D and
Hmm.
how Foci has worked with whether it's been funding programs from the government or even just people in your network to kind of find avenues for funding and avenues for growth. What has that looked like for you since you founded Foci?
Yeah, so one of the kind of, and this is something that I inherited from the company that we spun out of, and the founder of that particular company was extremely good at this kind of stuff. But when I founded Foci, there was this idea of like, let's not do training for the sake of training, right?
Yeah.
So everything we do has to be real. It has to be a real problem. There has to be a real product out the other end. Part of it from a business strategy perspective, why would I waste dollars doing fictitious training activities, right? Let's generate some IP, some, future monetization capabilities. So we run a whole internal kind of almost a incubator or R&D lab. And that's how we manage our bench time. That's how we also ensure that as we hire people, we're hiring them into real projects, right? And we're giving them experience. We're kind of teaching them the Foci way of operating and developing. But it lets us also do a lot of dog fooding of either product development methodology, software development methodology, new tooling that we want to learn, right? A lot of agencies do this, but we really feel strongly about not doing it, which is I don't want to land on a project and then learn something on the client's dollar, right? That's not fair to them. And then for us, it puts undue stress on people when you're forcing them to do something for the absolute first time in like a client scenario. And it's just there's something doesn't sit right with me about it. So the way we've been operating is we run this entire R&D stream specifically for that reason. How do we scale up? How do we, kind of build stuff that's meaningful, but put people into a structure where there's milestones, there's sprints, there's, commitment. It's not like, well, maybe I'll do that training course tomorrow, right? So what we can then do is leverage Shred and these programs, R&D grants and credits, because we're actually generating IP with monetizable outcomes, right? And as a part of that, we release a number of open source projects. We've got like an AI solution that's out there for like AI co-pilot for product owners and product managers to write better requirements. It's called Requirement, MINT app. And we launched that like early last year, and we're probably one of the first to market with like SaaS products that's backed by the Google Vertex AI toolkit. So, for us, it's about like how do we use R&D as an accelerator to our consulting practice rather than like something that totally sits on the side, right?
Absolutely. That's exactly how it should be done too, Shan. I love hearing too that you're tapping into the many different kinds of funding programs that become available at certain milestones in your product development
Mm-hmm.
too. So like IRAP, if you have the idea, you apply for it, government backs you, they're excited about what you're going to do, and they'll give you the funding to get started.
Yeah.
Shred, of course, it's a little different. You got to actually make the investments yourselves and spend money to get that money back. But again, you're using it all. You're tapping into
Yeah.
it and stacking it effectively. And that's really cool. And also something that even your clients could follow suit. I'm not sure if you share that insight with them down the line, but making sure that they are structuring like their activities and applying for funding at certain milestones or ahead of time for certain things.
Mm-hmm.
It's so effective. It's just, I'm so happy to hear, Shan, that that's what Foci is focused on. And that's how you guys have executed on your R&D to date. Now, I know we're coming up on time. What's your take on the current state of startups, locally,
Yep.
globally, and just
Yep.
generally, how do you navigate today's market? Thinking big picture, what's some sage
Yeah.
wisdom you might have for somebody who's looking to build a business today in summer
Yeah.
2024? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a pretty conservative guy in terms of risk by nature, right? So I'm not the swing for the fences, try to
Yeah.
build a unicorn type of guy. What I would say is, between when kind of the money rich times of post COVID versus now is there's a lot more focus on the fundamentals, right? So I think we're past the point where you can get by and get funding to sell the dream and then try to figure it out later is so what I would encourage entrepreneurs and people jumping in today be like really focus on the fundamentals, right? Like really think about your business operations, think about your plan. That has to be backed by fact and some real knowledge, right? Like as a founder, go and get educated on business operations, on rev ops, on like, you know, doing proper marketing, doing proper,
Yeah.
like having a proper COO, right? Like, I think it's a lot harder now to get early stage funding if you don't have a COO in place than it used to be, where it was all very revenue focused. Now it's what's my downside risk? Are you going to be around in 2 years? Are you feeding me a bunch of, numbers that is that trend actually going to continue, or did you get lucky in the first year? So I think investors are a little bit more focused on operational risk and resiliency now.
Mhm.
So I do find I think for founders the bar has been raised and what you have to get educated in and learn about running a business, right? It used to be cool idea, with like a really great pitch will just get you there. I don't think that's
Yep.
happening anymore, which I think it's good for the market, right? Like I think for investors, when you have a higher win rate and a higher success rate, it's good for everybody. I think we
Totally.
want stability rather than like this crazy peakiness in the market.
Focus on the fundamentals, but I know I was even talking with Volta recently out of Halifax, Nova Scotia, and we were just talking about. I asked them a similar question about what do you want in like your pitch deck if you're pitching to
Mhm.
investors, and they're like, you don't need to necessarily have it in the deck itself, but today they're going to ask you about your go-to-market strategy, about your
Yeah,
revenue plans, about like you even said, what will be your contingencies in a down cycle, things like that. You
yeah,
don't have to have them displayed front and center, but that's a question that is absolutely going to get asked now. Might not have been asked a few years ago, but
yeah,
even things related to, again, that go to market. I'm in marketing, so I love that you nailed some of that and mentioned that you got to start thinking about that earlier than ever. But it's so true.
yeah,
Investors want a rounded business plan that has the fundamentals in place as early as possible,
yeah,
especially given all the uncertainty. Like that's just really what you have to make sure you have there. It's more than just an idea, it's the fundamentals of a business.
yeah.
I love that, Shan. Well, I cannot thank you enough for hopping on.
This has been great. I think the only parting word I would have for people is, really embrace it, right? Embrace the journey, right? And become a master of your craft and really get good at it, right? This isn't about just out there and saying, "Hey, I'm an entrepreneur," right? There's a lot of learning to happen and really embrace and enjoy that journey.
Yeah, and have fun along the journey too, and meet folks like Shan from Foci. Like, this is great. I can't thank you enough, Shan. This was an awesome chat, and I look forward to catching up again soon.